It's a very complex beast, I'll tell you that. Look, I started out in life as a scientist, and the conservation side of things really evolved in me. And I think that marine conservation is evolving as we speak anyway, but the concept of marine conservation, in the shortest way of describing it, is making sure that the resources that are there today are still there tomorrow and the next year and years after. That doesn't preclude being able to use those resources, and that's one of the beauties of the marine environment. Fish typically grow and reproduce on an annual scale, which means you can harvest some this year and there'll be more next year, and you can harvest some next year and there'll be more the year after. And so long as things like that are taken wisely and managed wisely, that's what I think is what all conservation should be about. I studied marine science at university and went on to do a PhD, but I found myself on a beach with a turtle one night, and she had tried to lay eggs many times and failed, and I crawled up behind her and she was missing a rear flipper. And so every time she dug down with one flipper, I reached in my hand and I dug down as if I was the other flipper. And about half an hour later, this turtle laid eggs. And 3 or 4 times that year she came back to lay eggs, and 3 or 4 times that year I was there being the other half of her digging process. And things like that stay with you. They really do. And it's been that plus many other experiences. But that one turtle, and she has a tag number, KSA4811, and I met her in 1987. I tell you, if I can remember all of that, you know it was a memory that stuck. The dugong is one of those animals that's nearly going to be our second recorded human-caused extinction. The other very well-known extinction of a marine species was of the Steller's sea cow, and humankind actually knows when the very last one was killed. Can you imagine being that person? And what sort of feeling can you carry through life as being the person who killed the very last one on the planet? And dugongs are headed that way if we don't do something about it. And I'd hate to think there's going to be another human being somewhere one day being responsible for killing the very last one of them in the wild. The numbers have decreased alarmingly through a big part of their range. There are still some very good strongholds in the Middle East and in Northern Australia, Papua New Guinea. But for the rest of their range, including Sri Lanka, numbers have gone down dramatically. And I would hate to think there'll be a Sri Lankan fisherman one day who knocks the last one of them on his head. And if I can, I'm going to do something about it. While I hold a British passport, I've barely ever lived in England. I grew up in Spain. I did undergraduate work in the United States. I lived in the Middle East for a big chunk of my life. And then I moved to Malaysia. And setting up the Marine Research Foundation really was a way for me to focus on the things that I thought had value. That I had bosses in the past who were great people, but that just couldn't see the value of the conservation, and particularly because I'd come out of an academic background where, you know, it's about students learning, it's about doing some practical research, but it's not really about saving wildlife. And I got to a point in life where that was what I really felt I should be doing. And MRF has been the conduit for me to do that. Okay, so sequentially, absolutely yes, there is a need for communities to become involved. In fact, it's the communities themselves that are the main impact, and in most cases that is accidental. It's not even on purpose. A fisherman puts out his nets and a dugong swims into it, and that's not good for either the dugong or the fisherman, because the fisherman loses his net, he loses his catch, and the dugong loses its life. So ultimately it's a lose-lose scenario. So if dugong conservation is going to work, it really has to be something that is driven by communities. But communities have reasons why they do things. People do things for reasons. And the trick is to see what are the drivers behind that and what can be done to modify those. A very good example of working with communities is a program I run in Papua New Guinea with the big giant leatherback sea turtles. And these are as big as a dugong and as endangered as a dugong. And these communities used to eat all of the eggs. Pretty much ever since World War II, every egg was either eaten or destroyed through predation. And we managed to run a program where the communities would receive benefits to the village. It wasn't cash. It would be maybe building a new classroom for their school, or repairing the church roof, or providing a freshwater supply to all the households. And I kept on telling the communities and the villagers that every time they walked past the village or the church or the classroom, that they should not thank me or not thank the donors who provided the funding, but rather to acknowledge the fact that they had those because they had looked after the turtles, and how looking after the turtles was creating all of these benefits in their life. That has been taken on board extremely, extremely strongly. And now those communities are all, even if I was to walk away tomorrow, I can guarantee that they would all look after turtles, because they can now see tangible benefits to being part of turtle conservation.